Here, go to ustream.com, ustr.am, the last two, Ustream, but there's a dot in front of the last two letters. Or do HTTP.
Ustream.
Yeah. Oh, you're not. You got to have a. I'm trying to. Yeah.
Well, can you give me the link whenever?
Well, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to.
And Mary Lynn is the vice president. Those are all fun things.
Ustream.net.
Here. This is the link. It's hard to see. http://ustre.
Sometimes they're like. I like to stop
Okay. This is it. That's a 1, that's a little j. USTRE.am/1, little j, capital U,
Little J. Capital U.
yeah, KH. We're, yeah, you're, okay, you want to,
No, I don't want to be in there.
Okay.
You're gonna tape it though. That's good. That's really.
But she does do
All right,
some.
here's what it
She
says.
does do some, and then she has one about it.
yeah, I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, it looks like, well, I think. Hey, partner. But
watching you on Facebook. It's not just how much it's like
Anthony Bruner.
Anthony, yeah.
Mary Lou.
I knew that I knew you. But I couldn't who you are. Yeah, we're seeing with a lot of figures. One was up there with Jared
Gets around.
We'll see.
I'm a chiropractor.
My daughter is going to be part of the
Oh, good.
mad about y'all looking like a lot of pictures of her.
Was that, what's his name from?
Claver.
Huh?
Claver.
Claver?
Yep.
Is that who he is?
Yep.
We make a big thing about it. And we are here to okay, and everything they
That is so cool. This way.
Hey Nathan. Hey Peter, how you been? All right? Pretty good. He used to be our
Go to Twitter and look for Political Brew. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm.
how much I can accomplish in the grassroots area.
It's.
I can get more accomplished.
I'm sending out a link. I'll send you a link. I'll send you.
Yay or whatever. Oh wait. David Hale, I had asked him if he was able to take over, you know, because he's like, well, I'm not going to run against you.
Positive confession.
There you go.
Hey, Rand. This is good to see you. Yeah, I know. I was just telling him, like, you know,
And he's live on Ustream.
yeah.
Okay, hold off. I'm glad I didn't jump your gun.
I don't know if I've ever met Nate.
And what is your name?
Yeah, this is a lot. I recognize the
And on the side, you're a bartender.
I'm gonna go find a seat. I lost my husband now.
recognize the
Next one, Ray. Either way, it worked out.
I'll go get my seat before it's too late.
I'll go with you.
Hey, Lori.
Wing say hi to.
The link is
Ladies and gentlemen,
is that right there. I'm
start to work your way toward your seats. We'll get underway in just a couple of minutes. We'll get our participants seated in the couple and get underway in just about 2 or 3 minutes. So go ahead and grab a seat and we'll get underway. Thank you. Check 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Lori, I don't have your email.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and have a seat and we will get underway.
Good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we can divert your attention and welcome you up here to the stage, it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome you here to the campus of SMU. I'm Mark Davis, host of a humble and lovable talk show on 660 AM The Answer. No shortage of material these days, including the issue that we're going to talk about tonight. And we have two magnificent gentlemen with which to do it. But first, a couple of things just to get our heads right in the big picture. First, if you'll join me in rising for a pledge to both of our flags. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And to the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Absolutely. Please seated and
I
thank
can
you.
forward this to you. What's your
It is wonderful
You can
to
type
see
it
some
in.
actual students and staff of SMU on a day when virtually all of them have been deployed to Irving to plant seismograph probes. My studio is in Irving, so if you hear things rattling off the walls tomorrow, it'll either because the topics are hot or because we've had another earthquake. But very seriously as we begin, on a day in which we gather at an event like this to embrace some of our rights and our freedoms and our liberties, we have elections to elect good people like this. Within our legislative bodies, we have elections to elect speakers and other officials. I'm sure you caught this morning that this was a day when there was an attempt to stifle free speech with gunfire. And look what happened. I know some people died, but there was a manhunt. We know who these people are. And from Paris, France to Paris, Texas, and across Europe and across America, people stood this hashtag, Je suis Charlie, I am Charlie, the magazine that dared to offer up some satire that didn't exactly go over well in the radical Muslim community. As North Korea tried to do some time before, and as some folks will try to do, what those of us who love freedom have to do is make it clear that we will not be cowed into submission, that we will not be told what kind of satire to do. We will not be told what kind of movies to release. We will not be told how to act in order to pander to extremists. And what happened today is we got a reminder that liberties must be fought for or they will be lost. So a moment of prayer, just God bless those whose lives were lost, and God bless free societies like ours where we can do things like this. It is a joy to welcome, beginning his second term out of District 114, the Honorable Jason Villalba. It is a pleasure to welcome, just unpacking his stuff out of District 115, the brand new first termer, the Honorable Matt Rinaldi. When we were setting this all up, are there debates and there are rules? I said, let's conduct it like the show, which may be a frightening concept. There'll be no calls for commercials, which is fine. But the bottom line is we're just going to kind of even it out, let these guys have equal chunks of time. But we said, let's absolutely have a good, solid, timed 2 minutes for opening statements and closing statements. And we flipped coins for that. And Matt is going to speak first for his opening statement. So Matt, your 2 minutes are on, and it's a pleasure to have you. Go, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you, Jason, for setting this up and for being here for this important discussion. On November 4th, voters sent a very clear message in the state of Texas. They elected by nearly 2/3 margins the most conservative House, the most conservative Senate, and the most conservative set of statewide office holders in Texas history. They sent a mandate to us. Voters deserve the limited government, constitutional, conservative government that they voted for. And there's one impediment to that. It isn't the Senate, it isn't our statewide office holders, it's the Texas House. Scott Turner wants to change that as Speaker of the House. He wants to let us vote on the conservative legislation that Republicans campaigned on. And I don't really think there's much difference in what we feel the debate is. Scott Turner will allow conservative legislation to come to the floor. Speaker Strauss will kill it. Scott Turner will empower conservatives. A Strauss-led House will empower Democrats. How do we know this? We know this from the statements of the candidates themselves. We know it from the identities of the people supporting them. in the statements made by the people supporting him, and we know it from history and how the House has been run in the past. Listen, the issues, there isn't any difference between us, I think, as to what's going to happen in a Strauss-led House and in a Turner-led House. Eddie Lucio, a Democrat, said in support of Joe Strauss, Democrats are vastly outnumbered. Only Joe Strauss will give us a voice. My colleague this summer, Representative Villalba, said this year, the Senate this session will be the most conservative and pass the most conservative legislation in Texas history.
About 30 seconds.
And much of that legislation will die in the Strauss-led House. Ross Ramsey from the Texas Tribune said that if there's a change in speaker, the House might pass more conservative legislation. I agree with all of them, and that's why I support Scott Turner for Texas House.
Jason.
Well, thank you first for Mark for being here. I mean, you're the draw. I mean, we're just sort of silent acts here.
The radio's about me. Here it is.
Thank you, Representative-elect Rinaldi, for coming together and having this great conversation. I just saw one of my good friends, Representative Stickman, in the House, y'all. So John's here. I'm sure he's going to be smart with me tonight. Based on the applause lines, I'm pretty sure I'm outnumbered here tonight. But I just want to say thank you for coming out and hearing the conversation we're going to have tonight. You know, look, I am the first to admit that most of what Representative Rinaldi is correct. What Rinaldi says is correct. We did move to the right on November the 4th. We have seen a much more strident and conservative Senate come together. I think we've seen it in the statewide office holders that we're going to have, and I think that's healthy. That's what the people have spoken to us and said that they want, and I think we're going to try to deliver on that. My issue with this debate and this conversation really is about the misinformation that's been spread about Speaker Strauss. Look, Representative Turner is a wonderful man. I've spent time with him. He has given wonderful comments on the floor about a number of issues. He is a devout, godly, conservative a person who is as a friend of mine, but I don't believe he's prepared yet to take the reins of the House. More importantly, I think that the information that you may have received at this point may not be accurate. You know, I'm an old football player by trade, and I'm watching these Dallas Cowboys every weekend, and I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing from these Cowboys. But I know when I was a football player that what was important was not what the referee said or what I told my coach I did or what even the coach said. What was important was that after those football games, in order for us to be more prepared for the next week, we would go back and look at the tape. We would look at that game film to determine what exactly it was that we did right and what we did wrong.
About 30 seconds, Jason.
Tonight, we are going to hear about the tape from Speaker Strauss. Now, you've heard that he's not a conservative, that he doesn't put bills on the floor that you like, and he's not doing the things in the pro-life community would want. But I think if you look consistently at the facts, and we'll talk about the facts tonight, and if you look at that tape, if you go to the game film, you will find that Speaker Strauss is a conservative, he is transparent, he is pragmatic, he is Reagan-esque. What am I doing? Just bear with me tonight and let's hear the facts. Again, you may not agree with me at this point, but let's look at the facts. Tonight you're going to hear what the true facts are about the conservative state of Texas.
Let's have a hashtag. We've established one. It's one I've sort of used in preparing for this, and that's @TXSpeakerDebate, @TXSpeakerDebate. And you can weigh in and probably direct some of the snarkier things to that round. I love all people. I love public reaction. Speaking of people who are here, the Honorable Stephanie Carter, who served well in 102 from 2010 to 2014. Stephanie, and a guy who I see more than some family members, and it's always great to be in the room with him, Rafael Cruz. Love to the family there. All right, then let it pivot back to Matt, and we're going to start broad and then get specific. The first thing that I want to know is give me a couple of really desirable things that will happen if your preferred speaker prevails, that will not happen if he does not.
If you look, we had almost unanimity in the issues on which Republicans campaigned in the last elections. They campaigned in favor of a tighter constitutional spending cap that's tied to inflation plus population growth instead of GDP, which is very important because if you think about it, if Texas ever turns blue, such a spending cap would render Democrats practically incapable of growing the size of government. If paired with another one of our governor's policies requiring a 2/3 majority in order to bust the spending cap. Elimination of the franchise tax, illegal immigration reform, stricter limits on illegal immigration, border security, life issues, Second Amendment, issue after issue, everything they campaigned on would come to the floor of the House for a vote. That's what would happen if Scott Turner were elected Speaker. Every issue you heard about in the campaign that every Republican campaigned on would come to the floor of the House for a vote. And I venture to tell you, most of them would pass. But with Strauss as Speaker, we've seen in the past that these issues have not come to the floor. They've been killed in committee, most notably the Calendars Committee, the State Affairs Committee, by his leadership team. That has been the problem with the Strauss-led House. That's what would change with a Scott Turner-led House.
Jason, feel free to weigh in.
Well, look, people always point to the bills that did not get passed. There were over 5,800 bills that were submitted during the last legislative session, almost 6,000. Of that, only 1,000 actually passed. Now, if you look back in history, even under Craddock and before, you will find that that's about the number that normally gets passed, a little less than 20%, a little more than 20%, plus or minus. It's not a function of the Speaker. No question, the Speaker does have authority through his appointment of committee chairmen, but in the end, it's the people's chamber. We are there to advance the cause of all of the people of Texas. We have the ability as chairman and vice chairman and members on those committees to kill bills. There are 10,000 ways a bill in the House can die. It's not driven by one single man. If you're going to penalize the Speaker Strauss for the bills that did not pass, then you must, of course, give him credit for those bills that have passed. And if you want to talk about that, let's just go through the litany very quickly. One of the strongest anti-abortion measures in the country was passed under this Speaker. One of the strongest voter identification bills in the country were passed under this Speaker. One of the strongest economies in the country and the highest job-growing economy in the country are promulgated by rules and regulations set forth by the House of Representatives under this Speaker. If you want progress in Texas, then you will advance this Speaker, because what he's been able to do is present a program that works for all Texans, and that is what is critical in this discussion.
Matt, a reply to the reply, because I'm a fan of conversation. So
and conversely, Representative Villalba can't take credit for the bills that did pass if he isn't going to allow the Speaker to take blame for the bills that didn't make the floor. I do want to point out that the two specific examples, voter ID was killed by the Speaker the election, the session prior to when it was passed. Abortion, he's going to take credit for the Speaker passing HB 2, when the Speaker did everything in his power to kill HB 2. Let me give you specifics. It wasn't brought up for a vote during the regular session. In the first special session, everybody remembers, on June 21st, when the bill was in the House, we knew that the Democrats were planning a filibuster and could only do it if they had one day. So look it up. The video is on the internet. June 21st, 10 o'clock session, 6 minutes long. Van Taylor, Representative Taylor, comes up to the mic and says, point of parliamentary procedure. Why are we not meeting tomorrow? Why are we jeopardizing this pro-life bill? And the answer from the Speaker was, we're not meeting tomorrow because we're not scheduled to meet tomorrow. That one day caused that filibuster that killed the bill in special session, and the second special session, the bill was passed because Governor Perry was adamant about getting it.
I think some progress is being made. Keep going. Go ahead, Jason.
So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, let's go to the game film. Let's look at what really happened during that debate. A couple of things. One, everyone knows that the regular session the Senate is under the 2/3 rule. When Senator Hagar attempted to pass essentially the same bill that Representative Laubenberg passed, it was not able to get out of the Senate because of the 2/3 rule. It was regular business that was not able to get to the floor. The Speaker and his team were highly aware that it would never be able to pass during regular session, which is why we waited until the special session. Let me give you another fact that's important if you're looking at the game tape. Representative Laubenberg, the champion of this bill, the person who put forward this bill in the first place, was able to get it across the finish line. Wonderful woman, wonderful conservative. She said, and I quote, "This bill and bills like it would not have been able to come to the floor and pass but for the help of Speaker Strauss." If you want the facts, look at the facts. The people that were actually there on the floor talking about these issues when they mattered the most. Representative Laubenberg says it. Other pro-life organizations like Texas Alliance for Life says it. Other people believe strongly. You can denigrate with your laughter about what they do, but they advance the cause. In the end, we are sent to Austin to make a difference, and we are protecting lives of the unborn in Texas because of what the Speaker has been able to do. We can talk about rhetoric all day long, but in the end, you're after results. My constituents are after results, and the results are that now we have a bill that prohibits abortion after 20 weeks. And before Speaker Strauss, we did not.
Let me, there's one more. I'm a fan of this, so Matt, right ahead. I think Congress would be in it.
Because I'm really enjoying this discussion about abortion. First of all, I've heard this argument before. The argument is that the abortion bill was not brought up during regular session because the 2/3 rule in the Senate would have killed it. Yet we know that leadership's method of operation was not to bring up bills, was not to kill bills simply because they would die in the Senate. In fact, conservative legislation was often brought up when they knew it would have died in the Senate. The Sanctuary City bill in 2011 was brought up. 2011 was brought up after, when they knew that the Senate could kill it with the 21 vote rule. So in the regular session, they brought up the Sanctuary Cities bill, passed it in the House when they knew it was going to die in the Senate. Then a special session was called. The Sanctuary City bill was added to the special session. Senate passed it out without the 21 vote rule, came to the House, died in committee. Okay? Gun bills last session. The gun bills in the Senate, most of the major gun bills like campus carry, dead on arrival. The Senate declared them dead on arrival. The next day, they scheduled gun day in the House. Gun bills, half off. We're going to pass all the gun bills. Why? Because we knew they were going to die in the Senate. Know what the difference is with the pro-life bill? They were scared it might pass. That's why they killed the pro-life bill. And by the way, in terms of other representatives who supported the pro-life bill, saying that the Speaker was responsible for HB2, let's just go to the source rather than third parties. The Speaker himself does not even take credit for HB2. In an interview in October of last year after the session, he was asked, "Are you proud of HB2?" He wouldn't say he was proud of HB2. In fact, he said that he didn't think life was a, quote, big issue, and wished it hadn't even come up at special session. It passed in spite of him, not because of him.
That's right.
Wrap this up and I'll move to another issue. Go ahead, Jason.
Let's wrap up the issue. And again, go back to the game film. Let's just talk about the facts tonight. The facts are, before we had Speaker Strauss, we did not have the following bills, and after Speaker Strauss, we do. Let me just name them for you. 1, HB2. The author herself gives credit to the Speaker. 2, sonogram. Now, sonogram was a bill that we passed last year that was important. Also a pro-life measure. Also gives credit to the Speaker for having passed that. 3, parental notification for minors receiving abortions. This is something that was very important. The Speaker not only voted on it, but he was helpful in putting that to bed. 4, the budget itself prohibits any kind of funding for abortion services. 5, the actual budget itself, HB1, which my own representative-elect was actually against before when he was campaigning, actually says that it prohibits any kind of funding for abortion services. Look, we can talk all day about words. Politicians are good with words. But in the end, what you care about the most are results. And the results are that before Speaker Strauss, we had a less anti-abortion sector in Texas, and afterwards, because of Speaker Strauss's leadership, we have a greater protection for the unborn.
All right, Jason, let me stay with you to have first shot at the next thing I want to bring up, which is immigration. And one of the things I see in here is frustration that we don't seem to be ambitious enough about securing the border and enforcing the law. Is it unfair for the people who say that that didn't seem like a big Strauss priority?
Well, I would say that unquestionably, illegal immigration is one of the issues that is really going to be impactful in this next legislative session. It's terribly important because it's impacting people all over the state of Texas. We have crisis in Texas today. Action must be taken. We've got to do what is right for the people of Texas. And we know that every dollar that goes to educate or to house a child or an individual who is not here as a citizen is one less dollar for our children, and that's something that we need to address. So let's, again, go back to the record and look what Speaker Strauss has done. So under Speaker Strauss, we have provided over $383 million for the next biennium for border security. At both instances where he was asked to sign on with the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor, additional resources to bolster the National Guard, or the Texas Guard, and as other agencies that would provide support, he was able to put $30 million, almost $1.2 million per week for border security, additional border security, and then on December the 1st, for the next fiscal year, provided an additional $86 million. Now, if you combine all these, we're looking at roughly $500 million of border security funds that not only had been approved by, but in certain instances, the 86 and the 30, actually signed on individually by Speaker Strauss. This is critically important to him. He cares about this issue. I care about this issue. I know Representative-elect Rinaldi cares about this issue, and we will address this issue. We spend more on border security than every other state combined. We have done a good job in the face of the abdication of President Obama in dealing with this issue, and you can guarantee that people like myself and Representative-elect Rinaldi will go down to Austin and do this again with the support of Speaker Strauss.
Matt, go ahead.
I'm hearing the argument over and over again that we'll point to a bill that was passed and say because of Strauss's leadership it was passed, without providing that causal link as to actually what he did to pass it when we don't hear him talking about it, ever. You know, it was reminding me of something, because my parents are here now in the audience.
Where are your parents?
My parents are right here in the front row.
Hey guys, we've met before. We came up to the house and we said hello. It's Frank, right? Dan, it's good to see you, Dan.
We were talking the other day, you know, because when I was a kid, my mother could not get me to clean my room, ever. I was like 10 years old. And I used to make every excuse in the book as to why I could not clean my room. I would hide, I would leave the house, I would come up with anything possible. Eventually, they put enough pressure on me, by threatening to punish me usually, I would clean the room. My mom's sitting right there. You can ask her afterwards. I don't think she'd say I exhibited great leadership in getting my room clean.
Courtney's probably a better representative of whether I'm clean or not.
Likewise, just because the speaker came to public pressure on an issue, intense public pressure, in one of the most conservative states in the country on certain issues, doesn't mean that he took a leadership role, including, in fact, most of the time he doesn't talk about these issues. Representative Villalba's used the same terms in describing him that he has used himself. He's a pass the budget and go home kind of guy. In other words, those conservative issues that you care about, like immigration, Second Amendment rights, life, he does not. Those are just things you talk about in the campaign.
That's right.
And when you enter that Capitol dome, we don't really do it. In other words, those are things said to trick you to walk for us.
Right.
And I don't believe that, and Scott Turner doesn't believe that. In fact, okay, so let's talk about immigration specifically. Sanctuary City Bill, not passed up, didn't find the floor last session. In fact, no major immigration legislation found the floor, except a Sanctuary City Bill, like we discussed earlier, was passed when they knew it was dead on arrival in the Senate. And that's it. An E-Verify bill hasn't made the floor. There's been bills that would have eliminated the DREAM Act, which provides in-state tuition to illegal aliens, never made the floor. And how can we give him credit for leadership on this issue when I don't think I've heard him say the word immigration? we can't give him credit for taking leadership on an issue that he hasn't taken leadership on himself. If you care about this issue, there's one alternative in the speaker's race, and that's Scott Turner, who's been out front on this issue.
Let me ask you both, because a lot of it has been a lot of references to the other house, references to the Senate, things that are dead on arrival in the Senate. If Texas is so darn conservative and the Senate's so darn conservative, why is so much dead on arrival over there? Either of you.
Well, I believe it's largely a function of the procedures that are set in place by the Senate. I mean, they do have the 2/3 rule. Until this year, we didn't have the tenor of the senators that we have now. I mean, with 9 new faces in the Senate, all of whom derive from the Tea Party caucus, if you will, I think you're going to see a much more conservative. I think you'll see a much more conservative Senate, and I've said repeatedly, this is a good thing. I mean, look, the people have spoken. You know, if you're going to look at blogs and things you read on Facebook about what I've said at meetings and how the House is going to kill conservative legislation, I plead with you, and in all sincerity, please actually listen to the tape. Listen to what I said. That was a meeting where I was giving a "I'm just a bill" speech. The Republican Party asked me, how does a bill come to fruition? How do you make a bill law? And I talked a little bit about what the process was. You know, you have the bill, it originates, and you have it in committee, and then ultimately goes to calendars, and then it goes to the floor, there's a debate. And what I said was, in a large number of situations, and this is just statistics, these bills will end up dying in the committee process, and calendars is one where it ultimately ends up. I didn't say that was a good thing or a bad thing, I just said that's what would happen. Look, I am proud of my conservative bona fides. I believe strongly in the conservative principles of what this speaker represents. But, you know, 80% of these bills die just naturally, and they often die in committee. Going back to immigration, again, I plead with you, just take a look at the results. I know that watching legislation being made can be like watching sausage, or even, you know, other situations that you don't want to look at. But in the end, what matters most to the people that I represent and the people that Representative Rinaldi represents are the results. And the results are, we have more money today than we've ever had before for border security. We've tripled the resources for border security by three times since 2009. 2009, we've tripled the amount. This is something that's important to Texans because we know it matters to you. We've done it. You have to give credit to the man who's at the top of the food chain, because without that credit, without that leadership, these bills may not have passed. Just as Representative Rinaldi said, if you're going to penalize the man for not getting bills passed, you have to give him credit for bills that do pass.
Having brought up money, let me weigh in with a couple of money questions. And Matt, let me go to you first. Are there things that a Scott Turner speakership would bring priority-wise in terms of spending? I mean, we have even everybody in the room largely conservative, but man, there's some things we probably have to find some more money for, like transportation. Where does that come from? Do you perceive, and I'll have the same question for Jason afterward, a philosophical difference in spending and spending priorities between a Speaker Turner and a Speaker Strauss?
Well, sure, I do. I think both Speaker Strauss and Scott Turner say that they want to prioritize the important parts of the budget, which is transportation, education, and water. But we saw last session that, in fact, the Speaker didn't prioritize transportation or water. He saved it for the end, which is why you were voting on it the last 2 elections. So I do think that Scott Turner would do a better job of prioritizing the important infrastructure items. I think the big difference will be in exactly the size of the budget and the size of Texas government. Listen, Representative Villalba talks as if, oh, well, you know, there's so many bills. Some of these bills that just didn't get through were just oversights. Well, we're not talking about oversights. We're talking about items on the budget like a constitutional amendment restricting growth in spending to inflation plus population growth every year, 2/3 vote to bust the spending cap, eliminating the franchise tax, 4/5 votes to raise taxes. This is stuff that was at the top of Governor Perry's budget compact. This is the top of our platform. These are the top 5 items in spending. You don't just forget it. That's like leaving your car somewhere and just forget it. I mean, you don't forget something like that. So what will a Turner speakership do? I think you'll see a budget that's more fiscally responsible. I think you'll see these budget constraints getting through. And in fact, we can look at historical evidence from last session. We did have a budget that, well, at least appropriations last session that increased 26% over the previous session. Now, Representative Villalba is going to say that's incorrect because, well, you know, we spent it, we appropriated it last session, but we spent it in the previous budget to eliminate the increase. Well, look over Strauss's entire speakership, okay? If you look at the growth in appropriations of the all funds budget, the size of Texas government grew 33% during his 3 terms. That's staggering, and I don't think you would see that during a Scott Turner speakership.
Jason.
Well, he's right. I would say that 26% number is a misnomer. PolitiFact, which is a bipartisan organization that analyzes these issues, took a look at it, and they suggested that it was actually lower than growth plus inflation. You know, look, in the end, we can only spend as much money as we can bring into the coffers, and then we have to keep it very fiscally conservative. I think with what's going to be happening with oil and gas in the next biennium, we're going to have to tighten that belt. I think being fiscally conservative and prudent is the right thing to do. I think you'll see the speaker do that. But again, I ask you, let's look at the results of what happened. Texas is the strongest economy in the world, not in only the country, but in the world. Texas has low taxes. We've got one of the strongest tort reform systems in the country. That is largely from Governor Perry's leadership, but also was passed under Speaker Strauss. We have seen more job creation in Texas than any other state by a factor of 3x. These are important facts. In the end, what matters is progress for Texans, making sure that you have a good job, making sure your kids can go to college, making sure that we can provide water and transportation, and we've been able to do that. Water was something that was at the end of the debate because it was one of the most important issues that we had to face, and it was very complex. What we crafted was a